Gotta start off by saying this is a tool I always dreamed of having, and you know what, I didn't actually think I would ever own. But here we are. This is what dreams are made out of, folks. I've done it every which way. I've done belt sanding, hand sanding, drum sanding, and finally, wide belt sanding. So I'm gonna give you some details about this wide belt sander. This machine is from Italy, and the brand name is Costa. I was fortunate enough to purchase it through an auction, which was through the same auction that we got the jointer planer through in London, Ontario. I called Costa, and while doing a little R&D, little technical troubleshooting, and happened to ask them on the phone how much one of these machines is brand new. This one is from 2005, and the gentleman on the phone did give me a price from a brand new machine, and he was telling me this machine runs about 150,000 US dollars brand new. Let me tell you, I was floored when I heard that price. So auctions, online classifieds, eBay, anywhere you can find a used machine has really worked for me. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but I highly, highly recommend it rather than just jumping into a brand new machine and carrying a lot of debt to pay for a machine like this. You're wondering how much did I actually get the machine for? All right, here we go, I'll tell you. I paid about 19,000 Canadian dollars for this machine at auction, and it came with about 100 sanding belts. Each sanding belt is worth about $85 to $100 each. I did have to pay for a machinery mover. They had it in storage for a little bit, more additional expense until I was ready to have the machine brought to my location. All in all, I probably have about $25,000 to $26,000 invested in the machine to get it to my location and wired up and running. So the details about this machine is that it's a 60 horsepower machine. It has two 30 horsepower motors that run each sanding belt. It has two sanding belts. One comes down to a drum and goes around a round roller, basically. The other one comes down to a platen. So it comes down to a roller, goes across, and actually has a flat bottom with a pad in there, which is adjustable, that pushes the paper down, and then goes to another roller and comes back up. So the front roller is a little bit more aggressive, brute force, where the back roller is a little bit more finesse, to the point of the company I purchased this from was literally only sanding veneered plywood sheets. Because with us, we're mostly dealing with solid wood, so it doesn't need to be, paper thin accuracy. The machine weighs 6,400 pounds. So for me, we do have our forklift. It was fairly easy to get it off the truck and move it into the location. Although I did have to hire the machinery mover to load it on his own truck and bring it to me here. So as I was saying, there's two sanding belts in there. They are very easy to put on and off, although it basically is a two-person job. You can get away with one person. Very simply, there's a locking steel block, which you can undo the threaded handle, pull the block out, and then you're able to hook the sandpaper onto the top roller just a little bit, get it on the bottom, and you can shimmy it in very, very carefully. Changing the paper on the front or back, it's the exact same operation. Most of the time, we're using an 80 grit on the front roller and 120 grit on the back roller. We then hand sand from there virtually everything that we do. We're able to, if we're not filling the entire wide belt sander, we can take up to 1 millimeter per pass with this, and that's even with the 80 grit sandpaper. Typically, we're going to be taking 0.5 millimeter per pass, 0.2 or 3 mil on the front head, and then another 0.2 on the back head for a full 0.5 millimeter at a time. We then lower it. It also has a vacuum bed. So the roller bed that pulls the wood through the machine has a bunch of little holes in it, and we have about a 4 horsepower vacuum pump, which is hooked up to that, and really helpful, especially with epoxy tables, because they're relatively slippery, but once that vacuum sucks that tabletop down, there is no moving it. It has a built-in computer that we have to turn on. It's going to fire up and gives you a bunch of information about pressures and in-feed speeds and all sorts of stuff. But it is a very simple machine. All we really have to worry about is setting the thickness that we want to sand to, turning on and off each sanding belt. You can run just the front belt, you can run just the back belt, you can run both belts at the same time. And a very, very nice feature is that this machine has air cleaners that are hooked directly up to the air compressor and blow air onto the sandpaper, trying to keep it clean, but definitely extending the life of the sandpaper belt. I think without those air blowers on there, we'd be going through paper a lot more often. And talking about that, how long does the paper last? If we use it properly, it's even been 2 months between changes of the paper. Typically maybe about a month. There is tons and tons of electronics behind me in this panel. Like tons of electronics, relays, circuit breakers, all sorts of stuff. We have not had any electrical issues with this machine. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We've had a little bit of issues with the pneumatics. If you didn't know, this machine is hooked up to our air compressor and it uses a lot of air. It actually tensions the belt with air, and the belt also oscillates back and forth. So instead of the machine, it's actually a very smart feature that instead of the machine having to be set up to hold your paper perfectly in one spot, it actually tilts the roller one way and the paper will move. It'll tilt the roller back and the paper moves back the other way. Also leaving us a better finish because you don't get that sanding grit in the one spot leaving a direct line down whatever you're sanding. Instead, the paper is going back and forth, leaving a much nicer sanding pattern. We have a 20 horsepower compressor in the back, and it is just enough to keep this thing running, fortunately. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna turn this thing on, we're gonna run through a coffee table that we're gonna need to refinish. So you're gonna see us putting this machine to good use, saving me probably a couple hours of hand sanding. Thank you, wide belt. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. This is our 53-inch wide belt sander. It's truly amazing to have this tool to surface our slabs, to surface our tabletops, and save us hours and hours and hours of sanding and coming out perfectly flat. We love this machine. We do offer a sanding service. We charge $240 for an hour. We have a minimum charge of 1 hour. A lot of local woodworkers who pour an epoxy table, glue up a big wide solid wood table, then bring it to us and we'll run it through top and bottom. And you get your table back, sand it to 120 grit. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? This machine, little spoiler alert here, is heading down to Concept 13. My dealer Rob actually purchased this from me and we're gonna be upgrading. We got a big surprise coming. Stay tuned, in a couple months we'll update you with the new wide belt sander and planer, all in one package, coming soon. As always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. You guys are why we create these videos, so we can share with you what we do, how we do it, and answer some of your questions along the way. If you got any, leave them in the comments. As always, smash that like button, subscribe already, and just make it a great one, everyone. Make it a great one.